The neutral zone, the vast expanse of space stretched out before Captain Elena Reyes as she stood on the observation deck of Outpost Omega. The reinforced transparent aluminum viewport offered an unobstructed view of the swirling nebula that marked the boundary of human-controlled space. Beyond that cosmic veil lay the territories of two powerful alien civilizations, the Zarkef Imperium and the Velaran Confederation. Elena sighed, her breath fogging the cool surface of the viewport. For the past 5 years, Outpost Omega had served as humanity's farthest-flung sentinel, a bastion of neutrality in an increasingly tense galactic neighborhood. The station's strategic location made it a vital hub for trade and diplomacy between the three species, but it also placed it squarely in the crosshairs should conflict ever erupt. "Captain, you're needed in the command center," a voice crackled over her comm unit, interrupting her contemplation. "On my way," Elena replied, taking one last look at the nebula before turning on her heel and striding towards the nearest lift. The command center buzzed with activity as Elena entered. Holographic displays flickered with information, and the low hum of conversations filled the air. Her XO, Commander Takashi Himura, approached with a datapad in hand. "What's the situation, Takashi?" Elena asked, accepting the pad and scanning its contents. "We've got incoming ships, Captain. 1 Zarkef cruiser and 2 Velaran frigates, all on approach vectors to the station." Elena's brow furrowed. It wasn't unusual for ships from both factions to dock at Omega, but rarely did they arrive simultaneously. "Any communication from either party?" Takashi shook his head. "Nothing beyond standard docking requests, but the timing feels off." "Agreed," Elena muttered. "Have security on standby, but maintain our usual welcoming protocols. We're still neutral in this, and I intend to keep it that way." As Elena issued orders and her crew prepared for the arrivals, she couldn't shake the feeling that their delicate balancing act was about to become much more precarious. The first to dock was the Zarkef cruiser, its sleek, predatory design a stark contrast to the utilitarian architecture of Omega. From its airlock emerged Ambassador Kazoth, his chitinous exoskeleton gleaming under the station's lights. Flanking him were 2 guards, their multiple arms each gripping fearsome-looking weapons. "Ambassador Kazoth," Elena greeted, keeping her voice level and professional. "Welcome back to Outpost Omega." The Zarkef's mandibles clicked in what Elena had learned to interpret as a gesture of acknowledgement. "Captain Reyes," Kazoth's translator device conveyed in a metallic approximation of his chittering speech. "Your hospitality is noted, as always." Before Elena could respond, the station trembled slightly as the Velaran frigates completed their docking procedures. Moments later, a delegation of the avian-like Velarans swept into the bay, led by their own ambassador, Shrila Tar. Elena watched as Kazoth and Shrila Tar locked eyes across the docking bay. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. "Ambassadors," Elena said, forcing a smile. "What a pleasant surprise to have you both visiting us at the same time. Perhaps we could adjourn to the conference room for refreshments." Kazoth's antennae twitched irritably. "I think not, Captain. Our business here is pressing and does not require the presence of certain parties." Shrila Tar's feathers ruffled, her wings flexing slightly in agitation. "Curious. We were about to say the same thing." Elena felt a headache forming behind her eyes. This was precisely the sort of situation she'd been dreading since taking command of Omega. "Ambassadors, please. Whatever your business, Outpost Omega remains neutral territory. We're happy to accommodate both of your delegations, but I must insist on maintaining decorum." The 2 alien leaders stared at each other for a long moment before Shrila Tar finally nodded. "Very well, Captain. We shall abide by your station's protocols, for now." As Elena led the 2 groups towards separate conference rooms, she caught Takashi's eye and gave a subtle nod. He understood immediately, tapping his comm unit to alert security to maintain a heightened state of readiness. Once the delegations were settled, Elena retreated to her office, slumping into her chair with a groan. She pulled up the latest intelligence reports on her terminal, searching for any clue as to what might have brought both ambassadors to Omega with such urgency. A gentle chime at her door interrupted her reading. "Enter," she called out. Dr. Samira Khalil, the station's chief xenobiologist and Elena's closest friend aboard Omega, stepped inside. Her dark eyes twinkled with a mix of curiosity and concern. "I heard our illustrious guests have arrived. How bad is it?" Elena ran a hand through her short-cropped hair. "On a scale of 1 to we're all about to die in a fiery explosion, I'd say we're hovering around a 7. Samura winced. "That bad, huh? What do you think they want?" "I don't know," Elena admitted. "But whatever it is, I have a feeling our policy of neutrality is about to be put to the test." As if on cue, Elena's comm unit buzzed. "Captain," Takashi's voice came through, tension evident in his tone. "We're picking up some unusual readings from the nebula. You might want to see this." Elena and Samura exchanged worried glances before hurrying out of the office. As they entered the command center, all eyes turned to the main view screen. The normally placid swirls of the nebula were churning, flashes of energy crackling through the cosmic gases, and emerging from the chaotic display were ships, dozens of them, their designs unlike anything in the database of known vessels. "What the hell?" Elena breathed, her mind racing to process the implications of what she was seeing. As alarms began to blare throughout the station, Elena realized that remaining neutral might no longer be an option. The universe, it seemed, had other plans for humanity. Stirrings of conflict. The command center of Outpost Omega had erupted into controlled chaos. Officers rushed between stations, calling out readings and status updates as the mysterious fleet continued to emerge from the nebula. Captain Elena Reyes stood at the center of it all, her eyes fixed on the main view screen. The unknown ships were unlike anything she had ever seen. Their hulls seemed to shimmer and shift, as if they were only partially present in normal space. "Status report," Elena barked, her voice cutting through the din. Commander Takashi Himura responded immediately. 37 vessels detected so far, Captain. No known configuration matches in our database. They're holding position just outside the nebula's edge. Any attempts at communication? Negative, sir. They're maintaining radio silence. Elena's mind raced. The arrival of this unknown force had just complicated an already tense situation. She needed to act fast. "Takashi, I want our defenses at full readiness, but do not power weapons unless I give the order. We can't afford to appear aggressive." She paused, considering her next move. "And get me a secure line to Earth Command. They need to know what's happening out here." "Aye, Captain," Takashi nodded, moving to carry out her orders. As her XO worked, Elena turned to Dr. Samira Khalil. "Samura, I need your expertise. Can you make any sense of these ships? Their design, their capabilities, anything?" The xenobiologist's brow furrowed as she studied the sensor readings. "It's unlike any technology I've ever encountered. The way they interact with space itself, it's as if they're facing in and out of our reality." Before Elena could respond, Takashi called out, "Captain, we're being hailed. It's Ambassador Kazov." Elena took a deep breath, steeling herself. "Put him through." The insectoid face of the Zarkef ambassador appeared on a side screen. His mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation, Elena had learned. "Captain Reyes," Kazov's translator conveyed, "I demand an explanation for this incursion. Is this some human trick?" Elena kept her voice steady. "Ambassador, I assure you we are as surprised by these developments as you are. We have no knowledge of these vessels or their origins." Kazov's compound eyes seemed to narrow. "A likely story. Perhaps you're Velaran allies." "We are not allied with the Velarans, Ambassador," Elena interrupted firmly. "Outpost Omega remains neutral, as always." As if on cue, another communication channel opened. Ambassador Shrila Te's avian features filled a new screen. "Captain," the Velaran's melodious voice trilled, I hope you have a good explanation for this show of force. The Confederation will not stand for such blatant aggression in neutral space. Elena felt a headache forming behind her eyes. Ambassador Tay, as I was just explaining to Ambassador Kazoth, we have no connection to these ships. We are currently attempting to establish communication and determine their intentions. Both alien ambassadors began speaking at once, their accusations and demands blending into a cacophony of translated speech. Elena raised a hand, silencing them both. Ambassadors, please. This situation requires calm and cooperation. I suggest we convene in the main conference room to discuss our options. In the meantime, I ask that you both refrain from any hostile actions. We don't want to provoke an unknown force. There was a tense moment of silence before both ambassadors grudgingly agreed. As the communication channels closed, Elena let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Takashi, you have the bridge. Keep trying to establish contact with the unknown fleet. I'll be in the conference room, attempting to prevent an interstellar incident. Her XO nodded grimly. Good luck, Captain. You'll need it. As Elena made her way to the conference room, her mind whirled with possibilities. Who were these new arrivals? What did they want? And how could she maintain the delicate balance between the Zarkef and Velerans in the face of this new threat? The conference room was thick with tension when Elena arrived. Kazoth and his guards stood rigidly on one side, while Srila Tal and her entourage occupied the other. The two species couldn't have been more different. The Zarkef with their hard exoskeletons and multiple limbs, the Velerans with their graceful avian features and iridescent feathers. Yet both radiated the same mix of fear and aggression. Thank you for joining me, ambassadors, Elena began, taking her place at the head of the table. I understand that this situation has us all on edge, but it's crucial that we approach this rationally. Kazoth's mandibles clicked rapidly. Rationality? When faced with an unknown fleet on our borders, the Imperium demands action. Srila Tay's feathers ruffled in agitation. For once, I agree with the bug. The Confederation cannot sit idly by while a potential threat looms. Elena raised her hands placatingly. I understand your concerns, but hasty action could lead to disaster. We don't know the capabilities or intentions of these newcomers. A show of force might be seen as an act of aggression. As the debate raged on, Elena's comm unit buzzed. She excused herself and stepped to the corner of the room. Go ahead, Takashi, she said quietly. Captain, we've made contact with the unknown fleet. They're requesting to send a representative to the station. Elena's heart raced. This could be the breakthrough they needed, or the catalyst for conflict. Understood. Prepare Docking Bay 3 and have a security team stand by. I'm on my way. Turning back to the ambassadors, Elena cleared her throat. Gentlemen, we have a development. The unknown fleet has requested a meeting. I believe it would be beneficial for both of your governments to be present for this first contact. Kazoth and Srila exchanged wary glances before reluctantly agreeing. As they made their way to the docking bay, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing on the precipice of something monumental. The next few moments could shape the future of not just humanity, but all known sentient species in the galaxy. The docking bay doors slid open, revealing a sight that made even the seasoned diplomats gasp. The being that emerged from the airlock was unlike anything they had ever encountered. It seemed to shift and change as it moved, its form never quite settling into a definable shape. One moment it appeared humanoid, the next it resembled a writhing mass of tentacles, and then it shimmered like a cloud of sparkling mist. Elena stepped forward, her voice steady despite her racing heart. On behalf of Outpost Omega and the human race, I welcome you. I am Captain Elena Reyes. The being's response came not as sound, but as a sensation in their minds, a blend of thoughts, emotions, and abstract concepts that somehow coalesced into understandable communication. We are the nexus, the impression formed in their consciousness. We have come to warn you. The barriers between realities are weakening. What was separate must now unite. or all will be lost. As the implications of this statement washed over them, Elena realized that neutrality was no longer an option. The universe had just become a much more complicated place, and humanity would have to choose its path carefully. The breaking point. The conference room of Outpost Omega had never felt so small. Captain Elena Reyes sat at the head of the table, flanked by Ambassador Kazoth of the Zarketh Imperium and Ambassador Shrila Ter of the Velaran Confederation. Across from them, the shimmering form of the Nexus representative pulsed with an otherworldly energy. "Let me see if I understand correctly," Elena began, her voice steady despite the weight of the situation. "You're saying that the very fabric of reality is coming apart, and that our universe is about to collide with others?" The Nexus being's form rippled, conveying agreement. Its response resonated in their minds. The boundaries between realities have always been thin, but now they are fraying. Without intervention, the collision will destroy all. Kazoth's mandibles clicked rapidly. "And why should we believe you? This could be an elaborate ruse to force our cooperation." Shrila Ter's feathers ruffled in agitation. "For once, I agree with the Zarketh. What proof can you offer of this impending catastrophe?" The Nexus being pulsed, and suddenly the room around them seemed to shift. The walls became translucent, revealing the vast expanse of space beyond. But it wasn't the familiar starscape they were used to. Reality itself appeared to be buckling, with tears in the fabric of space-time visible to the naked eye. "By the eternal flock," Shrila Ter whispered, her wings trembling. Even Kazoth seemed shaken, his usual bravado faltering in the face of this cosmic horror. Elena leaned forward, her mind racing. "You mentioned intervention. What exactly did you have in mind?" The Nexus being's form coalesced into a rough approximation of a humanoid shape. "We possess the technology to stabilize the boundaries between realities, but we cannot do it alone. We require the combined efforts of all sentient species in this sector of space." "Cooperation?" Kazoth scoffed. "The Imperium does not collaborate with lesser beings." Shrila Ter's crest rose in indignation. "Lesser? The Confederation has achieved technological marvels your kind can barely comprehend." As the two ambassadors fell into familiar patterns of bickering, Elena felt a headache forming behind her eyes. She slammed her hand on the table, the sharp sound cutting through the argument. "Enough," she shouted, her patience finally snapping. "Don't you see? This is bigger than your petty rivalries. The fate of everything we know is at stake." The room fell silent, all eyes turning to the human captain. Elena took a deep breath, realizing that this was the moment where humanity's stance of neutrality would be truly tested. "I propose a coalition," she said, her voice firm. "Humans, Zarketh, Velarans, and the Nexus, all working together to save our shared reality. We each bring unique strengths to the table. United, we stand a chance. Divided, we're doomed." The Nexus being pulsed with what Elena interpreted as approval. Kazoth and Shrila Ter, however, remained skeptical. "And who would lead this coalition?" Kazoth asked, his tone dripping with disdain. Before either ambassador could state their claim, Elena made a bold decision. "Humanity will. We've maintained neutrality all this time, which makes us the ideal mediators. Plus, Outpost Omega is perfectly positioned to serve as a base of operations." She braced herself for outrage, but to her surprise, both ambassadors seemed to consider the proposal. After all, accepting human leadership was preferable to submitting to their longtime rivals. As the negotiations continued, alarms suddenly blared throughout the station. Commander Takashi Himura's voice came over the comm system, tense and urgent. "Captain, we've got a situation. A Zarketh battlecruiser just dropped out of FTL near the station. They're charging weapons." Kazoth's compound eyes widened in genuine surprise. "I gave no such order." Elena was already on her feet, racing towards the command center with the others in tow. As they arrived, the main view screen showed the massive Zarketh vessel, its weapon ports glowing with building energy. Hail them, Elena ordered, her mind whirling with possibilities. Had the Zarkef leadership decided to take matters into their own hands? The face of a Zarkef commander appeared on screen, his chitinous features set in grim determination. This is Commander Vexkar of the Imperial battlecruiser Relentless. We will not allow our civilization to be manipulated by interdimensional interlopers. Surrender the Nexus being, or we will open fire. Elena felt the weight of countless lies pressing down on her shoulders. This was it, the moment where neutrality was no longer an option. Her next actions would irrevocably alter the course of galactic history. Commander Vexkar, she said, her voice steady and resolute. I am Captain Elena Reyes of Outpost Omega. We will not comply with your demand. The Nexus being is under our protection, and we are working together to address a threat that endangers us all. Vexkar's mandibles clicked in agitation. Then you leave us no choice. Prepare tow. Suddenly, a new voice cut through the transmission. Belay that order, Commander. Ambassador Kazoth stepped into view of the comm, his posture radiating authority. By the power vested in me by the Imperium, I countermand your orders. Stand down immediately. Confusion flickered across Vexkar's features. But sir, our intelligence suggested. Your intelligence is outdated, Kazoth interrupted. The situation has changed. Power down your weapons and await further instructions. For a tense moment, it seemed as though Vexkar might disobey. But slowly, the glow of the battlecruiser's weapon ports dimmed. As the immediate threat passed, Elena turned to Kazoth, a mix of relief and suspicion in her eyes. Thank you, Ambassador, but I have to ask, why? Kazoth's antennae twitched thoughtfully. Because, Captain Reyes, you were right. This threat transcends our past conflicts. The Zarkef Imperium will join your coalition. Shrila ruffled her feathers, then nodded sullenly. As will the Valoran Confederation. We cannot afford to stand apart in the face of such danger. The Nexus being pulsed with what Elena interpreted as cautious optimism. In her mind, she heard its thoughts. The first step has been taken, but many challenges lie ahead. Elena looked around the command center, at the faces of her human crew, at the alien ambassadors, and at the shimmering form of the Nexus being. She realized that in this moment, the future of multiple realities rested on their ability to work together. Then let's get to work, she said, her voice filled with determination. We have a multiverse to save. As the coalition began to take shape, Elena couldn't help but wonder what other trials awaited them. The breaking point had been reached, neutrality abandoned. Now, humanity would play a central role in a cosmic drama beyond anything they had ever imagined. The stars outside seemed to flicker, as if acknowledging the momentous shift that had just occurred. The battle to save reality itself had begun, and Outpost Omega stood at the very heart of it all. Unexpected allies. The days following the formation of the coalition were a whirlwind of activity aboard Outpost Omega. Captain Elena Reyes found herself at the center of a storm of diplomacy, strategy sessions, and technological integration unlike anything humanity had ever experienced. As she entered the newly christened Coalition Command Center, Elena marveled at the sight before her. Humans worked alongside Zarkef and Velerans, their differences set aside in the face of the greater threat. At the heart of it all, the Nexus being pulsed gently, its shimmering form interfacing with a hastily constructed terminal. Status report, Elena called out, her voice cutting through the busy hum of the room. Commander Takashi Himura approached, looking haggard but determined. We're making progress, Captain, but it's slow going. The Nexus technology is, well, it's beyond anything we've ever seen. That's putting it mildly, Dr. Samira Khalil chimed in, joining them. The xenobiologist's eyes sparkled with a mix of exhaustion and excitement. We're basically trying to understand the fundamental nature of reality itself. It's like teaching quantum physics to a caveman. Elena nodded, understanding the enormity of the task before them. And our guests. Takashi grimaced slightly. The Zarkef and Veleran delegations are cooperating, but there's still tension. Old habits die hard, I suppose. As if on cue, raised voices caught Elena's attention. Ambassador Kizoth and Ambassador Shrila were engaged in a heated debate near one of the workstations. Your proposed energy matrix is flawed, Kizoth chittered, his mandibles clicking rapidly in agitation. It will collapse under the strain of interdimensional forces. Shrila feathers ruffled indignantly. And I suppose your brute force approach is any better. We need finesse, not raw power. Elena sighed, steeling herself to intervene once again. But before she could take a step, a new voice cut through the argument. Why not both? All eyes turned to the source of the statement. A young human engineer, Lisa Chen, stood nervously but resolutely before the bickering ambassadors. I've been studying both of your proposals, Lisa continued, her voice gaining confidence. If we combine the Zarkef's power generation with the Veleran's precision control systems, we could create a hybrid approach that's stronger than either alone. For a moment, silence reigned. Then, to everyone's surprise, both Kizoth and Shrila burst into their species equivalent of laughter. It seems, Kizoth said, his translator struggling to convey his amusement, that we've been outdone by human ingenuity once again. Shrila nodded, her crest bobbing in agreement. Perhaps this is why the Nexus chose to contact your species first. You have a unique perspective. Elena felt a surge of pride for her crew and her species. This was why humanity had been chosen to lead, not because they were strongest or most advanced, but because they could bridge the gap between different ways of thinking. As the coalition settled back into work with renewed vigor, Elena's comm unit chirped. Captain, a voice came through, tense with urgency. We're detecting anomalies at the edge of the system. You need to see this. Elena rushed to the main view screen, the others close behind. What she saw made her breath catch in her throat. The fabric of space itself seemed to be tearing, revealing glimpses of other realities, strange stars, impossible geometries, and things that defied description flickered in and out of existence. Its beginning, the Nexus beings' thoughts resonated in their minds. The barriers between realities are weakening faster than anticipated. How long do we have? Elena asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Days, perhaps. A week at most before the damage becomes irreversible. The weight of trillions of lives across multiple realities pressed down on Elena's shoulders. She took a deep breath, then turned to face the assembled coalition. We're out of time for squabbling, she announced, her voice ringing with authority. From this moment on, we operate as one unit. Our differences don't matter anymore. The only thing that matters is saving everything we know, and everything we don't. To her relief and pride, she saw determination replace fear in the eyes of those around her, human, Zarkef, and Veleran alike. What's our plan, Captain? Takashi asked, standing ready. Elena turned to the Nexus being. You said your technology could stabilize the boundaries between realities. What do you need from us to make it happen? The Nexus pulsed, conveying complex information directly into their minds. Images of massive structures, intricate energy webs, and mind-bending equations flooded their consciousness. As the flow of information subsided, Elena saw understanding dawn on the faces of the scientists and engineers around her. They had been given a blueprint. Now it was up to them to build it. We'll need to construct stabilization nodes at key points throughout the system, Dr. Khalil said, her mind already racing with possibilities. But the power requirements are enormous. We'd need the output of a small star, Kizoth finished, his compound eyes gleaming with sudden insight. Or perhaps a controlled quantum singularity, Shrila chimed in, her wings quivering with excitement. If we combine Zarkef containment fields with Veleran precision instruments and human ingenuity to tie it all together, Elena added, a spark of hope igniting in her chest. We can do this. We have to do this. As the coalition sprang into action with renewed purpose, Elena couldn't help but marvel at the sight. Species that had been on the brink of war mere days ago were now working in perfect harmony, each contributing their unique strengths to the monumental task before them. But even as hope blossomed, a new alert sounded. Elena turned back to the view screen to see a fleet of ships emerging from the tiers in reality, ships of designs so alien and impossible that they defied comprehension. "Captain," Takashi's voice was tense. "We're being hailed, I think. It's like nothing we've ever encountered before." Elena straightened her uniform, acutely aware that she was about to make first contact with beings from another reality entirely. "Put it through," she ordered, her voice steady despite the gravity of the moment. The view screen flickered, and Elena found herself face to face, or what she assumed was face to face, with something utterly beyond her experience. It was as if reality itself had coalesced into a sentient form, shifting and changing in ways that made her eyes water. "We are the continuum," a voice that wasn't a voice resonated in her mind. "We come seeking allies in the war against entropy. Will you join us in preserving the tapestry of existence?" Elena glanced around at her unlikely coalition, humans, Zarketh, Velerans, and the Nexus being, all united in purpose. She turned back to the impossible entity on the screen, a smile playing at the corners of her lips. "The coalition stands ready," she declared. "Together, we'll save not just our reality, but all realities." As the newcomers joined their efforts, Elena realized that the stakes had just gotten even higher, but so had their chances of success. The universe, it seemed, was full of unexpected allies. They just have to be brave enough to reach out and grasp the opportunity. The turning tide. The space around Outpost Omega had become a hive of frenetic activity. Ships of various designs, human, Zarketh, Veleran, and the mind-bending constructs of the continuum, darted to and fro, ferrying materials and personnel to the massive structures taking shape at strategic points throughout the system. Captain Elena Reyes stood at the heart of the Coalition Command Center, her eyes fixed on the holographic display that showed the progress of their desperate plan. The stabilization nodes, massive technological marvels that blended the best of each species' capabilities, were slowly coming online. "Status report," Elena called out, her voice carrying the weight of countless worlds. Dr. Samira Khalil approached, dark circles under her eyes, betraying the sleepless nights she'd endured. "We've got 4 nodes operational, Captain. 2 more are at 80% completion. But..." Elena tensed. "But what?" Samira sighed. "The rifts are expanding faster than we anticipated. We're in a race against time, and right now, time's winning." As if to underscore her point, alarms blared throughout the station. Commander Takashi Himura's voice cut through the chaos. "Captain, we've got a problem. A massive rift is forming near the 3rd planet. It's like nothing we've seen before." Elena rushed to the main view screen, the others close behind. What she saw made her blood run cold. The rift wasn't just a tear in space-time, it was a gaping maw of unreality, threatening to swallow the entire planet. "Can we move the planet?" Ambassador Kazov chittered, his usual bravado replaced by genuine concern. Srila Tai's feathers drooped. "Even with our combined technologies, moving an entire planet in time, impossible." The Nexus being pulsed urgently, its thoughts resonating in their minds. "The rift must be closed, or it will destabilize the entire system. Our work will be for naught." Elena's mind raced. They were so close to completing their network of stabilization nodes. If they could just buy a little more time. Suddenly, an idea struck her. It was crazy, possibly suicidal, but it just might work. "The Reliant," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Captain." Takashi looked at her, confusion evident on his face. Elena turned to face her crew and the assembled representatives of the coalition. "The TUS Reliant, my old ship. She's been undergoing repairs and upgrades since this crisis began. if we overload her new quantum drive and detonate it inside the rift? Understanding dawned on the faces around her. Ambassador Kazos' mandibles clicked rapidly. The resulting explosion could temporarily stabilize the rift, giving us time to bring the final nodes online. But the ship would be destroyed, Srila Tay pointed out, her voice soft. And whoever pilots it. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Elena stood tall, her decision already made. I'll do it. It's my plan, my responsibility. Like hell you will. Takashi stepped forward, his face set in determination. You're needed here, coordinating the coalition. I'll pilot the Reliant. Before Elena could protest, others stepped forward, humans, Zarketh, Velerans, even a shimmering representative of the Continuum, all volunteering for what was almost certainly a suicide mission. Elena felt a lump form in her throat. This was humanity's greatest strength, the ability to inspire others, to unite diverse beings in a common cause. She realized that in leading this coalition, humans had already changed the course of galactic history. We'll draw lots, she decided, her voice thick with emotion. 5 crew members. Any species, any rank. We're all equal in the face of this threat. As the volunteers gathered to determine who would undertake this crucial mission, Elena turned back to the view screen. The rift loomed ominously, a stark reminder of the cosmic forces they were up against. Hours later, Elena stood in the docking bay, facing the 5 chosen crew members. Takashi had indeed drawn one of the lots, along with a Zarketh engineer, a Velaran navigator, a human scientist, and to everyone's surprise, a representative of the Continuum whose form shimmered and shifted like liquid starlight. What you're about to do, Elena addressed them, her voice carrying throughout the bay, goes beyond bravery. You're not just saving a planet, or even a solar system. You're preserving the very fabric of reality itself. No matter what happens, know that your names will be remembered across multiple universes. As the crew boarded the Reliant, Elena felt a tug at her mind. The Nexus being had approached, its form pulsing with an emotion she couldn't quite identify. You've done well, Captain, its thoughts resonated in her mind. When we chose to contact humanity, we hoped you would rise to the occasion. You've exceeded our wildest expectations. Elena watched as the Reliance engines flared to life, the ship gracefully exiting the docking bay. We're not out of the woods yet, she replied, her voice barely a whisper. Perhaps not, the Nexus agreed. But for the first time since this crisis began, I believe we have a real chance at victory. As the Reliant approached the massive rift, the entire coalition held its breath. The ship looked tiny against the backdrop of the cosmic maw, a lone firefly facing down a raging inferno. In the coalition command center, Elena watched the telemetry with bated breath. Steady as she goes, she murmured, knowing Takashi couldn't hear her but unable to stay silent. The Reliant plunged into the rift, disappearing from normal space. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a burst of energy unlike anything they had ever seen erupted from the heart of the anomaly. The rift writhed and pulsed, fighting against the stabilizing force of the quantum explosion. Alarms blared as sensors overloaded. The rift is collapsing, someone shouted. No, Elena corrected, her eyes fixed on the readings. It's stabilizing. They did it. They actually did it. As the energy dissipated, they saw that the massive rift had indeed been reduced to a manageable size. More importantly, it had stopped expanding. All teams, this is our window. Elena's voice rang out across all channels. Bring those final nodes online now. The next few hours were a blur of activity as the coalition raced to complete their work. One by one, the stabilization nodes came online, each one strengthening the barriers between realities. Finally, as the last node hummed to life, a wave of energy rippled across the system. The smaller rifts began to close, reality knitting itself back together before their very eyes. In the command center, cheers erupted. Humans embraced Zarketh and Velerans alike, all species united in their relief and triumph, the nexus being pulsed with joy, its thoughts a beacon of hope in their minds. Elena allowed herself a moment to bask in the victory before turning to the viewscreen. The rift where the Reliant had made its last stand remained, though greatly diminished. "Scan for survivors," she ordered, not daring to hope but unable to give up. For long moments, there was nothing. Then, a ping. A life pod, tumbling out of the stabilized rift. Then another, and another. 5 life pods in total, one for each member of the Reliant's final crew. As rescue ships raced to retrieve the heroes, Elena felt tears of joy and relief streaming down her face. They had done the impossible. They had saved reality itself. And in doing so, they had forged bonds between species that would reshape the galaxy for generations to come. The tide had turned, and humanity, once content to remain neutral, now stood at the forefront of a new era of galactic cooperation. A new galactic order. 1 year after the reality crisis, Outpost Omega had transformed. Once a simple frontier station, it now stood as the heart of a thriving interspecies community. The stabilization nodes, no longer needed to hold reality together, had been repurposed into a network of instantaneous travel points connecting far-flung corners of the galaxy. Captain Elena Reyes, now Admiral Reyes, stood in her office, gazing out at the bustling activity beyond her window. Ships of all designs, human, Zarketh, Velaran, and even the ethereal constructs of the Continuum, weaved intricate patterns in space, a testament to the new era of cooperation. A chime at her door drew her attention. "Enter," she called. Commander Takashi Himura, still bearing faint scars from his heroic mission aboard the Reliant, stepped inside. "The delegates are ready, Admiral." Elena nodded, straightening her uniform. "Then let's not keep them waiting." As they walked towards the newly constructed Grand Assembly Hall, Elena marveled at how much had changed. The coalition, formed in desperate times, had evolved into something far greater, the Galactic Concordat, a union of species dedicated to mutual prosperity and the exploration of the multiverse. The doors to the assembly hall slid open, revealing a scene that would have been unthinkable just a year ago. Representatives from dozens of species filled the chamber, their differences set aside in pursuit of a common goal. Elena took her place at the podium, facing the assembled delegates. She saw familiar faces: Ambassador Kazoth, his chitin gleaming; Ambassador Shrila Tar, her feathers shimmering with anticipation; Dr. Samira Khalil, now head of the Concordat's scientific division. And there, pulsing gently at the heart of the assembly, the nexus being that had started it all. "Distinguished delegates," Elena began, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. "1 year ago, we faced a crisis that threatened not just our world, not just our galaxy, but the very fabric of reality itself. We stood on the brink of cosmic annihilation." She paused, letting the weight of those words sink in. "But in our darkest hour, we discovered something remarkable. We found that our differences, in biology, in culture, in thought, were not obstacles to be overcome, but strengths to be celebrated. Together, we achieved the impossible. We saved reality." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Today, we gather not in crisis, but in hope. The Galactic Concordat stands as a testament to what we can achieve when we set aside our fears and embrace the infinite possibilities of cooperation. Elena gestured to the vast window behind her, where the shimmering network of repurposed stabilization nodes was visible. These nodes, once our lifeline against cosmic entropy, now serve as the foundation for a new age of exploration and discovery. With them, we can traverse not just the vast distances of our own galaxy, but peer into other realities, expanding the boundaries of knowledge in ways we never thought possible. She turned back to the assembly, her eyes shining with passion. "But with this great power comes great responsibility. We have seen the consequences of cosmic meddling, of barriers breached before their time. As we step into this new frontier, we must do so with wisdom, with caution, and above all, with respect for the delicate balance of the multiverse. Elena's gaze swept across the chamber, meeting the eyes, or equivalent sensory organs, of each delegate. The challenges ahead are immense. There are still rifts to be sealed, cosmic anomalies to be studied, and untold wonders to be discovered. But I have faith in this concordat, in the bonds we forged, and in the limitless potential of unified purpose. She squared her shoulders, her voice ringing with conviction. Humanity once chose neutrality, believing it was the path to peace. We were wrong. True peace, true progress, comes not from standing apart, but from standing together. From recognizing that despite our differences, we are all threads in the grand tapestry of existence. Elena raised her hand, gesturing to the stars beyond. Today, we take our first steps into a larger universe, not as conquerors, not as mere explorers, but as guardians of a cosmic legacy. Together, we will write the next chapter in the story of creation itself. As applause thundered through the chamber, Elena felt a familiar tug at her mind. The Nexus being's thoughts resonated within her. You have come so far, children of Earth. Once we feared your potential for destruction. Now we see your capacity for creation, for unity. The multiverse trembles not in fear, but in anticipation of what you will become. Elena smiled, her heart swelling with pride and hope. The journey ahead would be long, filled with challenges yet unimagined. But as she looked out at the faces of her fellow cosmic citizens, human, alien, and everything in between, she knew that together they could face anything. The age of neutrality was over. The age of unity had begun, and humanity, once content to watch from the sidelines, now stood at the forefront of a grand cosmic adventure. As the galactic concordat set to work, charting the course for their shared future, the stars themselves seemed to shine a little brighter. The universe, in all its infinite wonder, awaited.